Can Mississippi State make the Sweet 16?
You are Locked On Mississippi State, your daily podcast on the Mississippi State Bulldogs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Well, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Go to FanDuel.com. Well, this is an exciting episode. This is the first episode with Landon and I as your co-host. My name is Jaron Sport. I write for Athlon Sports, cover college football and the NBA, but mainly focus on SEC schools. And then Landon, diehard sports fan, but also has been a sports anchor in the past. So we're excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to be on here, be starting this podcast, and it's a great time to do it with, brackets are starting to come out. Everyone's getting excited for those tournament pools. So, it's the perfect time to get back into this.
Yeah, and so we wanted to introduce ourselves real quick, but we got to get to the main topic. The March Madness is here, which is one of my favorite times of the whole season, or of any sport, really.
Yeah.
I believe it's the best postseason tournament in all sports, personally.
Oh, yeah, it definitely is. You can always say, oh, this year this happened in baseball or this NFL playoff run, but year in and year out, there's nothing compares to March Madness.
Right. So like we talked about, are they Sweet 16 bound? Is Mississippi State Sweet 16 bound? We found out they got the 8 seed. They're going to be playing Baylor, the 9 seed. The only issue is they got Duke as their 1 seed in their bracket, and that's who they'd have to play to get to the Sweet 16. But let's first talk about the Baylor matchup. I really like this matchup for Mississippi State. Been watching Mississippi State a lot this year, watched Baylor a lot this year. Both of them are really similar in terms of both are really good offensive rebound teams. Both are really bad at allowing offensive rebounds.
Yeah.
So it's going to come down to which team does better at that. And also, it's probably going to come down to the 3-ball a little bit. Mississippi State does not shoot the 3-ball very well. Baylor shoots it at 35%. Mississippi State, I believe, is at 31% for the season from 3. And so that's going to be, 31.4%. That's going to be key for both these teams. Offensive rebounds, second chance points, the 3, that's going to be the key.
Yeah, that's going to be key. And also who has the best player on the court. A lot of times that's what these March Madness games come down to, is who has the best player in the game. And Mississippi State, I think, has the best player in this matchup, Josh Hubbard. I
might have a hot take. Do they have the 2 best players in the matchup?
Oh, and who would be number 2?
I think Cameron Matthews deserves that just because of how great he's been this year. And I know you look at his points per game, he's not second on the team in points. He's actually, I believe, 6th on the team in points at 7.2. But just everything he does for them, I would argue he is the second best. Obviously Edgecombe is very good for Baylor, and they have some really good guys, Omeyer and Wright. But the all the stuff that Cameron Matthews does, along with Hubbard, who I think is the best player in the matchup, I don't know. It's a tough one.
If he's not number 2, he's number 3. If you want, someone could make an argument for someone else, but yeah, he's definitely that defense. And a lot of times, who has the best player, and then can you stop the other team's best player? And they have a forward who can guard multiple positions in Matthews at 6'7", all defensive SEC first team. He can lock up a couple different positions and get in there and get some rebounds. And if he gets going, that might turn the tide of this game in the Bulldogs' favor.
Yeah, and the one big worry for me is there's not much inside presence for Mississippi State. Keyshawn Murphy comes off the bench, second in leading scorer at 11.8 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game in 24 minutes. But he comes off the bench. He plays just over half the game. It's just he's not going to be a consistent threat out there. And then Omeyer is Baylor's obviously leading scorer. He starts for them. But they also don't have a lot of big depth. They don't really have a true center. They play more of just guards and forwards, and they play more small and try to run you and spread you out that way. But I think this is a really good matchup for Mississippi State. And coming off an SEC tournament where, you had to win the first game against LSU, you blew them out. And then Missouri, that was a game that you felt was a toss-up. Hopefully they could win that one. Obviously they played them really close, and then Missouri kind of pulled away at the end. But you can't hate on that performance. The one thing that worries me about Mississippi State into the NCAA tournament is the 3-point shot.
Mhm.
But on the flip side, we've seen guards like Hubbard just go on these crazy runs and defy odds and lead you on this path.
And he's the exact type of player that can do it too. It's not like we're projecting, oh, if this guy who's never shown he can do something catches fire. I mean, he's the exact type of player that you see almost every March carry a team a couple games. And they're getting a Baylor team that, while they're very talented, hasn't been that good down the stretch of their season. I mean, you look back at those games and a lot of losses outside of really their game against Kansas State in the Big 12 tournament's the only game that wasn't a close game that they played.
Yeah, they went 3-5 down the stretch. I mean, they're licking their wounds heading into the NCAA tournament. And so this is a game that you can get. Now, can they get to the Sweet 16? That's the question we pose.
That's the big question.
I'm torn on it because I think Duke might be the best team in the country, but my worry about Duke is I believe 5 of their top 6 scorers are freshmen. One of those is obviously Cooper Flagg, who we saw get hurt. Now it sounds like he's going to play and he'll be healthy for the NCAA tournament, but it was a bad ankle sprain, so we'll see what happens there. And so there's no guarantees there. They also lost Brown, who was one of their key role players off the bench. He got hurt. He re-injured his shoulder in the same game that Flagg did against Georgia Tech. And I don't think he's going to be playing the rest of the year. I mean, it didn't look like he was going to be. I don't know if they announced that or not, but and every year we see Duke get upset in games that they shouldn't lose. So that's why it's hard to say, are they Sweet 16 bet? Right now, if you made me bet, I would say no, just because I think this Duke team is a little different than the ones we've seen in the past. They don't seem to have the slip-ups during the season. I mean, they went 19-1 in ACC play. I mean, Duke, even at their best, wasn't doing that kind of stuff all the time. I mean, obviously, they had some great seasons in the ACC. Now, part of that is the ACC is down. North Carolina isn't as good. I mean, Syracuse isn't as good. Like, it's down as a whole, but I think you go into that game, and my worry is Duke does have size and a lot of size. And it's going to take one of those Hubbard incredible games, but they can throw a lot of defenders at him, Proctor being one of them. So right now, if you made me bet, I'm not there yet. I don't think I can go there.
Yeah, it's kind of hard because Duke's that team, you look at them and you're like, oh man, this is a team that if they're not winning the national title, they're playing for it. Like they have that kind of team. But then you also, it's Duke, and every year they lose the game that they shouldn't lose in the tournament.
Lose that game that we're talking about.
They lose to Mississippi State, this seeded team every year, it seems like. And it could happen. I mean, a lot of it is going to come down to how bad Cooper Flagg's injury is. I mean, even if he plays, is he playing at 70%, 60% of what he is? And those ankle sprains can linger, and they're very easy to re-aggravate. So even if he plays, it could flare back up in between the 2 games. So there's a lot of guesses, and I'm with you. If I had to pick today, I'd probably say no. But if you let me fill out my bracket in 5 minutes, there's a good chance I put Mississippi State over Duke on a bracket.
Well, and let's see the Baylor game. Are they super hot from 3? And it's like, okay, we'll see what happens. But that'll be a lot of fun when that comes out and when that game ends up happening. If first you gotta get past Baylor, and then we'll see what happens there. But coming up next, the strength of schedule for several college football teams has been announced. How tough is Mississippi State's? We'll talk about that coming up next. All right, well, eating healthy doesn't have to be complicated. With Factor, you get chef-made, dietitian-approved meals that are ready to heat and eat in just 2 minutes, so you can fuel your body without the hassle of cooking. Factor meals arrive fresh, never frozen, and with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences each week, you can customize your menu to fit your goals, whether that's Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. I've used Factor in the past. It is very easy. It's very quick and very simple, especially if you want to meal prep for work and things like that. You don't have to go through all the hassle. But it's not just about meals. Factor also offers smoothies, breakfasts, and snacks, so you always have something nutritious ready to go. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/factorpodcast and use code FactorPodcast to get 50% off your first box, plus free shipping. That's code FactorPodcast at factormeals.com/factorpodcast to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. And get the supplies you need from the site made for the skilled trades. Supply House, whether you're in plumbing, HVAC, or electrical work, Supply House is the reliable way to order products online. Their easy to use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Plus, with a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers an expert support and industry leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for the trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, and electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5 for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. All right, thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every day, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to follow us on Facebook and X. Also give us a like, subscribe, and share this video on YouTube. We're also on pretty much wherever you listen to your podcast, so check us out there.
We're everywhere.
We're everywhere. Yeah, from now on, we're everywhere. All right, let's get into it. Bill Connolly, which is ESPN's SP Plus guru, which that's just an analytical thing. If you don't know what it is, it takes a lot of things into account.
Yeah.
Players' injuries, just a bunch of things to come up with
all the different things that can go into a schedule.
Yeah, exactly. And so Mississippi State came out as the number 6 toughest schedule in the country. Landon, what's your thoughts?
Well, I mean, anyone who's scrolled over that schedule, just, when it drops, you look through it, you're like, man, that is a tough schedule. But then you kind of dig into it, and I'm not sure it's the 6th toughest. I think it's 1 or 2.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it honestly could be, if not the toughest, it's in the top 3. I think 6 is too low, because once you get out of those first 4 games, which one of those 4 includes someone who's in the college football playoff last year,
right?
It's a gauntlet after those first 4 games, and one of those first 4 is not a gimme.
No, not at all. In that game, Arizona State, you mentioned when you schedule that, because they schedule these in advance. When they're scheduling that, they're like, oh, we're starting 4-0, like we're good. We're going SEC play hot, like it's great.
Yeah, they're like, Herm Edwards and his sanctions are coming to town.
No, it's a college football playoff team you're playing, and the other games we shouldn't say are easy, because when you're Mississippi State and you go 2-10 and you have 1 win over an FBS opponent last year, no games are easy. You don't have an easy game.
And you got Northern Illinois, who did beat Notre Dame last year
on
too.
The road.
So again, I mean, even the ones that should be easy,
right,
aren't necessarily easy. But that SEC schedule, once it opens, wow.
Yeah. No, it is brutal, and a lot of those games are on the road. I mean, it's a very tough schedule. I mean, let's just go through it a little bit, Landon. Talk us through the beginning of the schedule, especially the SEC part, because you want to talk about a brutal start to your SEC play. You're probably not going to find much tougher than what Mississippi State's about to go through.
You got another college football playoff team in Tennessee, but you do get them at home.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at least you have that, but then you have to go to A&M, then a week off, but then you get to go to Florida.
Yeah. Who might be the hottest team in the country the way they ended the year.
That's true. And then Texas comes to town the week after that.
Yeah.
And that's a stretch. And then I guess Notre Dame is kind of not Notre Dame, excuse me. Arkansas is kind of your week off, but that's a road game.
Yep.
And then you get Georgia at home.
At home at least.
And then you have to go to Missouri and then finish, of course, the year with Ole Miss. But, man.
Which, that's the crazy. I think Ole Miss is going to be a little down. But when you look at their schedule, there are 3, I guess if you want to call it most winnable games in the SEC play. Yeah, Arkansas, Missouri, Ole Miss, 2 of them are on the road.
Right.
The really tough ones, those are your home games. Like, you would love to switch those out and be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
"Hey, we're probably not gonna win that anyways. Let's make that an away game."
Go
Like,
ahead and just go ahead and travel to Georgia, get it over with. But no, it's a tough task. That's a tough task for any team, let alone a team that's in the point of its like rebuilding and finding its identity under Levy that Mississippi State is in.
yeah. And, the one thing I will say, you can fix a roster in the offseason.
Yeah.
That's one great thing about the transfer portal. I mean, the transfer portal, you won't hear me talk many positives about the transfer portal, but that's one of them is you can flip your team. I mean, that's one thing you are able to do is flip your team in the transfer portal. So we'll see what ends up happening. Mississippi State had the number 15 ranked class going to 24/7 Sports. So they did a lot of really good work in the transfer portal. I'm not sold on Blake Shapen as a quarterback. I wasn't sold on him at Baylor, and I'm not sold at him at Mississippi State.
Yeah, me either.
So that's a worry for me because they didn't go get a quarterback either.
Right.
There was kind of rumors in the running for Jackson Arnold, who obviously struggled at Oklahoma, but he's this big high profile prospect.
Mm-hmm.
Jeff Levy was the one who recruited him and got him to Oklahoma. So like maybe that would just click. Obviously he picks Auburn and you don't have him. And then Michael Van Buren, who true freshman, the stats don't blow you away, but I thought he played really well last year, really given his circumstance. Well, he transfers out, goes to LSU. Right. So you are stuck with Shapen going forward. I don't know. You got to improve because, whether you like it or not, and I'm not saying like, oh, if Levy does bad again, he's fired, because I think they're going to give him some kind of leash in terms of an extended leash where he could get probably 3-4 years into this, especially with Zach Selman and his athletic director and Jeff Levy's long history that goes back to Oklahoma and even back when he was a player, when Levy was a player at Oklahoma. And this was Selman's really his first hire because Arnett was kind of, he did great in that bowl game right after Mike Leach passed away. And then Selman took the job and it was like, okay, let's just promote him and go.
Go on, yeah.
Yeah, and so this was really kind of his first hire as the head coach. And so I think that's also going to give him even more of a, extended leash.
I'd agree with that. And I think, Levy has to show improvement, but it doesn't have to be, we won 7 games. It can be, we won one more game than last year, but we're competitive all of them, and the offense was great.
Right.
Like, you have to start showing improvement. Now, I don't know if Shapen is going to be the guy that gets you there. I will say I've seen Blake Shapen play one of the greatest halves of football ever in person. The first half of the one Big 12 championship game he started, I was in the building. That man couldn't miss. It was one of the most impressive displays of quarterbacking I've ever seen. I've not seen that from him since halftime of that game.
Right.
The second half, he looked like the guy I expected he would be going into that game.
Right.
He was a decently highly touted recruit, but he's kind of he is what he is. And I guess if Levy puts him in great positions, then he could lead this team to something, but he's not a quarterback that inspires confidence, I guess, is kind of where I'm at.
We don't mean he is what he is in a bad way. He's a solid college quarterback.
Right. He's just that.
Yeah, and in the SEC, when you're kind of lacking in some areas already, you need that other guy, just a difference maker at that position.
Yeah, with a different gear, and he doesn't really have a second gear. He's just I'm not trying to run him down. It's just he's a very average to above average college football quarterback. Right. There's nothing wrong with that. He's just not a guy who's going to carry a team very often.
Right, and so this schedule is going to make it brutal for them, but. You hope you see that jump in year 2, just as a, just being in a year 2 for a head coach. Usually you see at least some kind of jump. Just don't get blown out. Show some improvement. Like, you're going to probably get blown out in some games. There's some really good teams in the SEC.
There's some very tough games on the schedule.
Yeah. The one thing I always talk about with new coaches, especially year 2, you need to start showing that you no longer get blown out. And then you need to show that you become a pain when you're playing at home. Because how many times have we seen like a team not be great, maybe, but they're tough to beat at home. And you might beat them, but you beat them by 3, or you might beat them by, 4, or is this always close? I mean, we hear Georgia talk about Auburn all the time, and Auburn hadn't been a great program recently, but they talk about how brutal it is to play there. That kind of needs to be the thing with Mississippi State. It's brutal to play there.
Yes, you need to find your identity, make it a tough place to play. And, since Levy's calling card his offense, the offense has to make a jump.
Yep, for sure. All right, coming up next, we do our top dog of the week. It is a new segment that we're very excited about, so don't go anywhere.
March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's 200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, and even who's cutting down the nets. Now, picking my favorites, I've got my eyes on a few underdogs this year, and as you heard, one of them is Mississippi State. They might make a run. FanDuel makes it even easier to back those with spreads, totals, and game props. Staying in the action with tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. Easy and fast. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when I win, I get paid instantly, no waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long.
The NCAA Tournament is here, and so is the Bracket Breakdown.
Locked On Podcast Network and Amazon Fire TV channels are teaming up to deliver NCAA Tournament coverage like never before. Watch studio shows featuring former players and Locked On's local experts as they guide you through every upset, buzzer beater, and bracket matchup.
Stream it all for free on Amazon Fire TV channel. Search Bracket Breakdown to see it all for free.
It's your team every day.
All right, and thanks for making Locked On Mississippi State your first listen every single day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure, one more time, follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. We also give us a like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, and share this video. We're also on all the different podcasts.
Appreciate all of you listening, too.
Yes, thank you. All right, so let's get into it. This is a new segment. It's called Top Dog of the Week. We're going to do it every single Monday. It's going to be from the previous weekend, who we think was the best player at Mississippi State. Can be any sport. It might even be the whole team. I mean, it just depends what happens.
A lot of top dogs.
Right. And we got baseball season, baseball teams rolling. Softball season, softball teams rolling. We got basketball going on. But Landon, top dog of the week, who is it?
It's going to be a guy we talked about earlier, Cameron Matthews. I mean, like we said, he's could be the second best player in the matchup against Baylor. And he's coming off an all SEC defense selection, and in his career, the only player in SEC history with 950 points, 850 rebounds, 350 assists, and 250 steals. That's a great career, especially when you take into effect all of the great players who have played in the SEC over the decades, the century. It's to be the only player who's done something in that conference. That's an accomplishment.
Yeah, and also going off, and I know that's a career deal, but also you go with how tough it's been this year. Maybe, Jay Billis from ESPN has said it's the best conference maybe in the history of the sport. And that means a lot. Yeah, we got 1980s Big East. We've got the ACC in the 2000s. I mean, we've got some great conferences. So that's a big, big compliment to say something like that. But yeah, I mean, when you've done something no one else has done in any of the Power Four conferences, but especially one with the SEC's history, that's big. But funny enough, I also went basketball, but I went with Josh Hubbard. I've talked about him. I love his game. I love the way he plays. He was named second team all SEC. He played, I thought really well in the SEC tournament in both games. Really, he had 26 against LSU, had 24 against Missouri. The one knock on him has been his field goal percentage has been around 39% for the season, but he shot 47% versus LSU, hit 50% of his threes. Threes didn't fall as well in the game against Missouri. But, I just think the year he's having, and, he was a 3-star or a 4-star, depending on where you look, coming out of high school. He left high school as Mississippi's all-time leading scorer. I mean, there was a lot of pressure, and he picked Mississippi State. He didn't pick Ole Miss, so he picked Mississippi State, and that's he's also got to carry that now, because when you're a top player in your own state and you pick Mississippi State, or if you picked Ole Miss, I mean, vice versa. And that's how it is at all these different schools that have multiple teams in the state. You pick one of them, you got to show out, because the other fan base are really going to let you hear about it.
Yeah, that's right. And he has had an amazing
Yeah.
year. Like, I mean, like you said, there was so much pressure on him, and he rose to the occasion with that pressure. And I mean, I think he's going to keep doing it. I mean, I'm honestly, he's one of the players. If you made me rank the players I'm most excited to watch in the tournament, he's one of them because you know we've said he's the type of player that tends to catch fire in this tournament style where it's just rhythm and volume. That's his game.
Yeah, in the last 8 games of the year, now the team kind of struggled. They went 3-5, but you know he averages 22 points per game in the last 8 games of the season. So he's going into the NCAA tournament on a heater right now.
Yeah, he is.
He's had a game where he scored 38. That was earlier in the year against Alabama. Ended up losing by 4 in that game, but he's had some monster games, multiple 20-point games. I mean, he's, like we said, he's the guy that can take you on a run and take you on a ride as Mississippi State fans. And I think because he's from Mississippi, he's ours. You know, he's that
makes it better. It makes it better.
It does, and that's what's going to really fuel that fandom to try to, really want him to succeed and really want him to go on this magical run that we've seen. You know, I mentioned to Landon before, they kind of remind me of Oral Roberts. Back when Max Amos was there, and I think O'Banner was the power forward there. Now Amos averaged more and stuff like that, but just the smaller guard that can just get hot and take you on this run. And Hubbard reminds me a lot of that. And so, you know, this is a big week for him and the whole team. Obviously, you're in the NCAA tournament. You really, I know everyone's goal is to win the national championship. That's the goal. But there's only some teams that have the realistic chances of winning it. Mm-hmm. And so every team should have goals based on what their expectations actually are. And for Mississippi State, I think if you made it Sweet 16, that would be an amazing season for you. I think even if you lost in the second round to Duke, but it was close, that would be a really good season. Just don't get bounced by Baylor. I think that's the big one. You need to not lose to Baylor.
Yeah, I agree. Everyone wants to win, but everyone else, but outside of those, 5-6 teams that have that legitimate we are national title type teams, you just want to make a run. You want to make a run to Sweet 16, Elite 8, just be the Cinderella story.
Right. Exactly. All right. Well, that will do it for our first episode with the Locked On Mississippi State. Right. Thank you guys again for making us your first listen. But if you want your second listen, check out the Locked On College Basketball with Isaac Shade and Andy Patton. March is here, so be the most informed college basketball fan throughout the madness. Find Locked On College Basketball on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. I know if you're going to be filling out brackets, competing against friends,
you're going to want to listen.
Yeah, you definitely want to listen. They're going to help you out big time. But remember, I'm Jaron. You can catch my work over on Athlon. A lot of SEC content, a lot of college football, even running some college basketball stuff right now with the tournament. That's Landon. Until
I don't have a blog, but I'll tell you what I think on Twitter.
Yeah, check us on Twitter. We got our @s at the bottom, @Landon MC, @Jaron Spoor. Tomorrow we're going to talk about the women's bracket a little bit, talk about some of that. We also got some more exciting football news, so you don't want to miss that. Until next time, Hail State.
Hail State.